I think that was the one that they got wrong. That was the one that the officials got wrong. The other ones you can look. It's 50-50. You can build a case for both sides, but that one there, I don't think he did anything wrong.
Absolutely, we do it all thanks to Tab, of course. How are you, Billy?
I'm well, thanks, Salty. It's appropriately named, isn't it? Magic round. It was a magic weekend. Had a bit of everything, and usually after a round of footy, all the players need to go and recover. But I think the players, the fans, the administrators, the people who work in the media, the weekend in Brisbane was huge, and it was a huge success. The energy around Suncorp Stadium in Brisbane it just keeps getting better and better and better, and it's a real festival of our game, a real celebration of our game. I absolutely loved it, and the footy didn't disappoint. We've got so much to go through there, so let's get into it.
The Melbourne Storm up against the Canberra Raiders, it's a game that just did not let us down, did it?
Wow, incredible. The Raiders have done it twice in a row now. They did it against the Dolphins, where they were down at half-time, down and out really, and then come back and an impressive win. And to score a try when the game is pretty much dead and buried with a minute to go on the clock, they've done that before too against the Sharks earlier in the year. So, they're a team. I think they're probably the hardest team to play against. They mightn't be the best team and the most clinical team, but they are a tough team to play against. They have their own style, and there was plenty of drama towards the end of the game. A few decisions, and to be honest, I think the coaches summed it up really well in their post-match press conference. Craig Bellamy was really disappointed with his team's discipline. You could tell that he was disappointed with some of the decisions made from the referees, and I think he's probably got some grounds to be disappointed in both those parties, both the referees and his team's discipline. And then Ricky Stewart, mentioned in his post-match press conference that, they were probably fortunate to get one of those decisions. So it was just the way the game went, but didn't it finish with a bang?
Certainly did. And that ill discipline, you go back to one moment and it was telling, wasn't it, Billy, when you give a penalty away when you're in possession on attack and you're up 2 converted tries at that time. And that was a real momentum changer in that first half.
It was the turning point. It was literally the turning point. I was watching it just thinking Melbourne are so on here. They're so on top of their game. And the Raiders couldn't go with them. And that moment was a turning point. That was the moment that the Raiders got back into the match. They got field position. They scored a couple of tries. And like I said, they're a tough team to play against. And that wasn't the only turnover with ball in hand for Melbourne. They had 2 or 3 times where they turned the ball over when they had possession, and one of them was a match-winning play by Ryan Pappenhausen with a field goal. And although you can argue the decision and whether the referee should have went back before that play the ball, interestingly the NRL came out and said it's only for serious offences that they would go back. I don't count that as a serious offence, so you can argue that, but you can't argue the fact that you did the wrong thing. So you can only control what you can control. And for the players, the Melbourne Storm need to look at their discipline and look at what they can control in front of them.
Do you think Canberra got under their skin?
Without doubt. Without doubt. That's their game. They're a tough team to play, and they play a physical type of game. And, there's a bit of niggle and without doubt, they got under the skin. And you don't turn the ball over 3 times in possession if the opposition don't get under your skin. So, that's a fair call.
And I suppose another example of that is the Stefano Toikamanu incident with Tom Starling. What did you make of that specific moment in the game, which was another telling one?
I think that was the one that they got wrong. That was the one that the officials got wrong. The other ones you can look. It's 50-50. You can build a case for both sides. But that one there, I don't think he did anything wrong. And Josh Papali'i didn't do anything wrong either. Like, how do you send 2 people to the sin bin when the game's on the line, extra time, we've just had an incredible magic round. We've just had an incredible balance up of people going to the sin bin. And for two guys that did nothing wrong, go to the sin bin? Come on.
And Tom Starling had, talk about Canberra getting under the skin of the Storm. He was at the centre of it. And I'm not criticising him in asking you this question, but I thought he was probably one of the catalysts for getting the Raiders back in the game, not just through that, but through some of his very good play as well.
Absolutely. And he's been really physical in the middle of the field this year. His defence has been great. He's really stood up. I think he's off contract, I believe. And there's some young stars coming through in key positions. You got young Owen Paddy that comes in off the bench and he looks to be the future of the Raiders in that position. But Tom Starling, he's doing a wonderful job, and that's a little bit of part of his game. Like they talk about Reid Marnie and the not so much the niggle, but just the competitiveness of those guys. And it's like I said, I don't think Atoy Kamanu did anything wrong. There wasn't a lash out with the leg. If anything, he sort of stumbled because Starling had his boot. But that's the way the officials saw it. And I believe they got that one wrong. I believe they got those two sin bins, one from either side. And the thing that hurt Melbourne wasn't necessarily the sin bin. It was the penalty in possession. They could have had a shot at field goal to win the game right there and then. But that was taken away from them.
Billy, just one more on that game. Two magnificent tries. I mean, the try to send it to Golden Point from Kyo Weeks, sensational, great individual bit of brilliance there from the Canberra number one. But the try that Suafar Longo set up with that magnificent run and the kick inside for Pappenhausen, boy, there's some special moments in that game.
Yeah, how good speed and skill when you combine those two. And Melbourne had a bit of that at the start of the game with Farlongo going down the sideline. A beautiful kick back in field, and Ryan Pappenhausen playing in his 100th NRL game. We all know the journey that Paps has had, and to rack up 100 NRL games is a great achievement for him. I think Joey Tarpany was playing his 200th NRL game. But those two guys, they're electric. They're great to watch. They're why people turn on the TV to watch our game. And the Kyo Weeks try, wow, like that was brilliant. The individual brilliance of Kyo Weeks and the chip and chase and the speed that he possesses, but the ability from Matty Nicholson to get that ball away, create the space, get the ball away, that was the moment. That was unbelievable. And like I said, the Raiders they're starting to make a habit of this. When they need points, they'll throw the ball around. And it's usually their two back rowers that are their X factors. It was Hudson Young on the left-hand side against the Sharks. And this time it was Matty Nicholson on the right and created a bit of space. And he is as good as any in open field play. He's quick, Kyo Weeks, and you could see the skill, the chip and chase, and he got the bounce and scored the try to put it level and send it to Golden Point.
I love how you asked that question before. It was obviously a rhetorical one. How good's speed and skill? Those of us, me included, who just watching, had none of it. You had both, so you can answer that one on your own.
Yeah, I didn't know what I was doing half the time, but sometimes it's better when you don't think, you just play.
Just one other one I've got to ask on Canberra. Is it true that a lot of us can be guilty in having your preconceived expectations or where you think teams are?
Yep.
We're now 9 rounds into the competition. We're a third of the way through the season, and the Raiders are sitting there at the top of the table. They're a genuine threat, aren't they?
Well, they didn't get there by luck, that's for sure. They got there by believing in the way that they play. And I think what we are guilty of sometimes, Salty, is thinking of a traditional way to play. There's many ways to do everything in life. There's many ways to play our game. And the Raiders are finding their way. And that's the great thing. I love that about positions. I love that about how teams go about it. There's different ways to play a position. You look at all different shapes and sizes in in certain positions, and then you look at teams, and teams just have to look at their strengths. What's our strengths? And we mightn't have the strengths that other teams have, the traditional strengths, but if you play to your strengths and you compete, you can put yourself in every contest and every game that you play, and that's what the Raiders are doing. They're never out, they never give up, and there just looks to be a real togetherness about Canberra. So whilst you've got that, you've got a great foundation to be successful.
Well, let's move on and talk about another game that there's so many storylines to come out of, and that is Penrith and their magnificent win over the Broncos. Nathan Cleary, wow, put on a clinic at Suncorp in Magic Round.
Did many people see this coming and think, the Panthers are going to beat the Broncos? What was it, 32?
32 to 8.
32-8. Yeah, probably not. No, there wouldn't have been many people that thought that. But were they capable of it? Absolutely. Absolutely they're capable of it, because you just have to look at their halfback and their captain and the way that he just took control of the game. And I said in the commentary, great players don't leave it to chance. And he didn't leave it to chance. He didn't leave the kicking to chance. He didn't leave the chasing the kick to chance. And there was a moment in the first half that we spoke about was probably a real turning point. Is he kicked early to space, and then he led the chase, and he put a big hit on Selwyn Cobbo. Now Selwyn Cobbo runs hard and he's a big body. And Nathan Cleary, he showed his team that that's the way that we need to do it. And then he went on and he had the classy moments as well. The little chip over the top to Tungle. He was in everything. The try he scored that was identical to the grand final try. It was a 5-star performance by Nathan Cleary. And whilst everyone had question marks over the Panthers, I don't think he had any question marks. He knew what they were capable of, and he knew what he was capable of. So it was a great game to call. It was a great game to watch.
Before we talk about the Broncos and your reaction to them coming out of it, you made mention of Nathan showing something to his teammates, and it got me thinking. I was sitting in the stands watching this game yesterday, so you get an opportunity to look at the body language of the players, and you could see early they just started to lift with every moment, even after the Ben Hunt try. You could just tell, though, that there was just something about the Panthers and the belief that they had, and that goes to those that haven't experienced premierships.
Yeah, absolutely. And there was a moment in the second half where their line speed was incredibly fast, and they were up in the face, and the Broncos were struggling to make any meters. And you could tell that their mindset had shifted. The young players in the Panthers have gone, I'm feeling what this system can do. I'm feeling when everyone is playing well, what we can do as a football team. And they'll get a lot of belief out of that. They'll get a lot of satisfaction and good feeling out of that performance. And who knows? That might be just the turning point in their season that they needed.
Yeah. What about on the flip side, Brisbane coming off that big win against the Bulldogs the week before? What do you make of Brisbane's performance?
It's interesting because I was thinking halfway through the game that the Broncos had an incredible first half against the Bulldogs. The Bulldogs, no one could get near the Bulldogs up until last week. And, for them to start like that, and I think they were keeping up with the clock. It was 32-0 after 30 minutes against the Dogs. And their second half wasn't great. We probably didn't think that was a concern, but, looking back on it, and just the teams that have had great performances in the first half and gone on to win the game haven't really backed it up. I asked David Middleton, our stats guru, in the commentary box yesterday, and he said that in the 7 teams that have led by 20 or more in the first half, the next week only 2 of them have gone on to win the following week. So 5 of them, I think there was a bye in there, hadn't gone on to win the next week. So it just shows you how even our competition is, and the mental aspect of our game. It's not all physical. The physical side of things, everyone's pretty even. So, it's the mental preparation. And, did the Broncos have the same mental preparation, and were they in the same headspace as what they were only a week before? So, they're the questions that you need to ask. And, it's a great learning curve for the Broncos because, although we see them as a top team and one of the premiership favourites, they've still got a bit of work to do and they've still got a bit of developing to do.
Teamless Tuesday is going to be interesting at Red Hill because Ezra Mam is now available, Billy.
Absolutely. Yeah. That's going to be a really interesting one. Does he go straight back in or does he play a little bit of football? The one thing about Ezra is he's been suspended. He hasn't been injured. So he'll be fit. He'll be ready to go. He might take a little bit to get match fit, but he would have been doing everything that the players playing would have done. The contact side of it, the running side of it. So I wouldn't expect him to be too far away from his peak fitness. Like I said, just maybe a little bit of match fitness, but it'll be interesting the way Michael Maguire approaches this. Does he approach it that we've had a pretty good start to the year. You've got to earn your way back into this team, or does he react to the weekend's game and go, well, you are going to help us be a better footy team. We need you to come back in straight away. So Tuesday afternoon will tell a lot.
Certainly will. Brisbane play Souths this coming weekend, and we'll talk more about that game in just a moment. As far as some of the other talking points over the weekend, we talk about Nathan Cleary and the impact he had. Well, another Panthers premiership winning half had a big impact. Jerome Luai with a win for the West Tigers. It was an entertaining game on Saturday night.
Yeah, if the Lockie Galvin saga was put to bed last week at Leichhardt when he had a great game back in the team, well, 2 wins on the trot, well, it's certainly dead and buried now. I think we can all move on from that situation, and they're a footy team, the Tigers. I've said for a while now that I think they can play finals. They're a really dangerous side. Dream Buller is, he's going to be an incredible player. He already is, but you wait till he starts developing and starts understanding the game and how to inject his strengths into his footy team. Api Coruscant's a real competitor. They're doing some wonderful things, the Tigers, and another great sign of their maturity and movement forward was Benji Marshall in the press conference. They just won a game. It's not easy to win games in the NRL, and he was disappointed. That's a real growth for the club. The Tigers are moving in the right direction, and hopefully there's some enjoyable times because they haven't played finals since 2011, and I think they're on the cusp of making their first final series in, 14 years?
Yeah, no, they were very good. It was an entertaining game, that's for sure, that one on Saturday night. I want to go back to Sunday and the Bulldogs bouncing back with a win over the Gold Coast Titans. Jacob Carraz, 3 tries.
Yeah.
I know you're not about giving anyone in a blue jersey a leg up, Billy, but you might be coaching against him in a few weeks' time. He's putting his name up in the frame, isn't he?
Yeah, I think that right-hand side for the Dogs is doing a great job. Jacob Preston, Carraz, and also Stephen Crichton. He's that sort of centre link. He's the real mature one, an experienced one in between them. But they're a dangerous footy team. And I've always admired the way the Bulldogs go about it, and they were always going to have a response to what happened in the first half last week. The Titans made them work for it, but they were just too classy and they were too in sync as a footy team. And it's probably the one thing that the Titans aren't at the moment. They're not in sync. There's a bit of effort in their game and a lot of effort from certain individuals, but you've got to be in sync. You've got to be on the same page, and that's they talk about great teams. Well, the Bulldogs, there's no better team performance in the NRL at the moment than the Bulldogs.
Yeah, they were very good. The Knights bounced back on Saturday when they had a win over South Sydney. It was a great try, wasn't there, when they linking up Best and Kalen Ponga. But the day belonged to the 21-year-old, 21st birthday for Fletcher Sharp. And didn't he have a day out, the Knights 5'8"?
Yeah, it's been pretty flat for the for the Knights. The bounce back has taken a while. It's taken 6 weeks. They've lost 5 in a row, and then it had to click. And they were up against a team that were decimated with injuries, the Rabbits, but they had to respond. And I think the one thing that they got right early is they got their attack right early. I know it's a defensive-orientated game, and defense holds a whole heap of value in success. But when you attack well, your defense is set up. And I think that's what they got right. They were really sharp with the footy, and pardon the pun, sharp. Got 3 tries. A big weekend for Fletcher. He turned 21 on that day, and scored 3 tries. He is so good. We spoke about Kyle Weeks in space. He is so good in space. He doesn't hesitate. He is electric speed, and he's got great footwork, and he just seems to know where to be at the right time. And let's not forget, he's playing a new position in the NRL. He hasn't played 5'8" in the NRL until this year, and he's only young, 21 years old. I think he's got a huge future, and it was a great performance. I think they all collectively, I thought Saifidi was really good in the front row. He was back from injury, and they all did their job. Best was great, and also Kalen Ponga. So, their key players really stood up, and they really needed that one. The pressure was mounting.
We can't let the weekend go after analysing different moments and so forth. In Magic Round, there was so much to talk about. We've got to touch on this performance from the Roosters. Not only, obviously, we know how many injuries they have at the moment, but they lost Sandon Smith in what was the first 10 minutes of the game, at least might even be prior to that. Zach Docker-Clay comes on. He goes into hooker. Connor Watson goes into the halves. And, wow, what a performance. Toya, magnificent. Nwanganita Wase, very good, but their forwards were just terrific. They're putting themselves in a good position for when Brandon Smith and Sam Walker are ready to return.
Yeah, you throw Lindsay Collins in there as well. He's been out also. The one thing the Roosters have done over the last couple of weeks, big performance on Anzac Day against the Dragons, and then another big performance against the Dolphins. They've stopped people talking about who they've lost over the off-season, and they've made you stand up and notice who's there. The Robert Toyers, the Nwanga Nitawazi, the Blake Steep. These young guys coming through are starting to, make their names in the NRL and say, hey, I'm here. I know Joey Manu mightn't be, but I am. And I thought Docker-Clay and Connor Watson did a great job jumping into those positions and changing their game at when Sandon Smith went off. But the other 2 guys that really stood up were Victor Radley and their captain, James Tedesco. I thought they were exceptional. James Tedesco, we talk about Nathan Cleary saying, oh, well, I'm not going to leave it to chance. Well, that's what James Tedesco did as well. And they just shirked that load. James had a little bit more of a kicking game, and Victor played that more first receiver role. Scored a try, set up a couple. They were really instrumental in this game. The other young guy that I thought really stood up was Robert Toya. The young Queenslander. He's from Brisbane. He would have been playing in front of friends and family, and it was a real breakout game for him also. He's been doing a lot right. Watching him off the football, he works really hard. Gets back there on the kick returns and works out of the back end. But he's really dangerous with the football up in good territory as well. So got a beautiful right foot step. Scored a couple of tries, I believe, and set up one as well. So. He's got a real future in the game, and they're going along nicely. After round 1, we're all talking about, are they going to win a game this year, the Roosters? There's so many players that they've lost, but Trent Robinson and James Tedesco have really led this young group.
Yeah, most certainly, and they've been fun to watch. They're a fun team to watch, aren't they, with some of the football that they're playing?
Well, footy is fun. Yeah, it's an enjoyable game. You've got to go on and express yourself, and when you've got quality players and players that have great athleticism, like you've got to use it, and they're doing that at the moment. The other young guy I didn't mention was Hugo Savala, and he is not your brilliant type of halfback, but they don't need that. They just need a great kicking game. They need a steady hand, a guy who's going to defend really well, and that's what Hugo's doing at the moment. And they're all playing their role, and they'll be enjoying their reviews at the minute.
The other team that will be enjoying their reviews as well is the Warriors. They held on against the fast-finishing Cowboys in the wet. This was so entertaining, this game to watch. But the Warriors, do you put them in the same boat, say, as a Canberra, Billy? I suppose we were talking about earlier, a lot of people thought, I don't know what to expect from the Warriors in 2025. But, hey, third of the season, and look where they are.
I put them in the same boat as the Roosters because that's how I thought about the Warriors after round one. I thought, wow, they're in for a really tough year. They went down to, was it
Canberra in Magic Round? Not Magic Round, in Vegas.
Yeah. And I was like, wow, they don't look on pace at all. And I think the form around Canberra probably tells a little bit about that. And they were certainly off in round one. Since that round one drumming against Canberra, they've lost one game, Salty, and that game was against the Tigers by 2 points. They've near been perfect since that moment over in Vegas, and they play as a team. I think Metcalf has been a huge success story, for the opening part of their season. They all play their role. We talk about the Bulldogs, doing all the team things well. Well, when the Warriors are on, the Warriors are doing the team things well, and they beat the Cowboys, who had won 4 in a row. No easy feat, and I think they get a few experienced players back shortly. Tuivasa-Sheck, Watini Zelezniak, he's back as well, and Fisher Harris, I think he's not far away either. So, going along nicely, and an injection of some experience is going to help.
Yeah, that's for sure. They face the Dragons this coming weekend. The Warriors are away from home. You're listening to the Billy Slater Podcast, and it is all thanks to Tab.
Fans always ask, Lozza, what was the best era of league? And I tell them, nothing beats the line-breaking, flick-passing, goose-stepping, Vegas-flying, turbo try-scoring, origin drought-breaking, simply the best era of footy we're in right now. And with more market stats and insights, it's easy to enjoy the best era in footy with the best app in footy.
Tab. We're on.
What's gambling really costing you? For free and confidential support, call the number on the screen or visit the website.
Billy M. Medal time on the Billy Slater Podcast, and we do it all thanks to Tab. By the way, Billy, I just went and had my cup of tea, so it's good that we're not in the studio together. So
sorry about that, mate. I apologise. If anyone hadn't seen the Channel 9 social media, I accidentally spilt some hot tea on Salty mid-call, and to be fair, and he didn't break stride, the big fella. He straight down, head
wiped
down,
off the cheek.
Wiped it off, kept going. Hey, you didn't worry about it. You played the whistle, didn't you?
That's it. Anyway, all good, all good. So those people commenting on social media, it wasn't, as people said, that it was the ladies' fault. It wasn't Christy Lee's fault.
It's my fault.
It was all on Billy, but it was all good.
It's always my fault. I'm getting used to that.
No, never your fault. Mate, okay. After Magic Round, Billy M. Medal, 8 winners. Which team stood out for you?
Yeah, look, there were some great performances across the weekend, and there were some exciting performances like the Canberra Raiders, last night, and I can't go past the performance of the Panthers. I just think the Panthers have been under so much pressure. They've won one game in 6 weeks. I think they won their opening game of the season, and they're only one game since then, and a lot of pressure on them. I just thought they were back to the Panthers of old. They were getting through all the work that they usually get through, and their star players. Dylan Edwards had some great moments. Nathan Cleary was the standout, but the Panthers for me were the team of the weekend.
And your best player, does it come from the Panthers? Because there were plenty of other great individual performances over the weekend. Who stood out for you?
Yeah, he does. There were some great individual performances. I think the hat-trick boys, Carraz and Sharp, they need a mention. the other guy that needs a mention is, James Tedesco. I thought he was super. He's been doing a wonderful job and, been really impressed with the leadership that he showed, in particular around this young group this year. But yeah, Nathan Cleary, he's the player of the week. And anyone that was at Magic Round yesterday, they got the opportunity to just watch Nathan Cleary, a clinical performance for 80 minutes. He kicked well, he chased well, he tackled well, he ran well, he passed well. He just did everything well. So, well deserved.
Well done, Nathan Cleary. All right, that was the Billy M medal. Thanks to Tab. The NRL season is here for the best time in sport. Tab has the best app in sport. Tab, we're on.
Chances are you're about to lose. For free and confidential support, call the number on the screen or visit the website.
Listener question time. And this one, Billy, has come through from Aiden. He says, hey, Billy, where do you rank Jaden Sewer's bomb try? Oh, poor Jaden Sewer. Yeah.
Just dig a big hole and then fill it in. Jump in first. I've been in this position, and you've bomb tries that you knew you should have scored. You should have passed the ball and you didn't. And we all go through it. But unfortunately for Jaden Sewer, Dream Bullet picked the ball up and ran 100 metres and scored a try down the other end to make it a 12-point turnaround. Now the Dragons could have went in half time, 4 points down, but they went in 10 points down, and it was a big moment. But at the end of the day, no one means to drop the ball. Now I think there was one from Ray Stone in Friday's match against the Roosters as well. Billy Smith did get a hand on the footy, but that's if he had his time over again, he'd be scoring that try. So they're the moments that they make you, they stay with you, and they're a part of your experience. I feel for Jaden because he works so hard. He gets through a whole heap of work, and with the line wide open like that, wet night, just a bit unlucky.
Now, this one from Andrew Duncan. He says, hi, Billy. Did you manage to hit the town whilst in Brizzy? The Caxton, other places? Assume you don't have to buy a drink as coach of Queensland. This question from Andrew might have been better directed to one of your assistant coaches or another member of the Channel 9 commentary team.
Or the host of this podcast, just quietly. Don't worry about that. Your voice is a little bit croaky this morning too, Salty. Well, firstly, I'm like everyone else. Nothing's for free. You got to buy your drinks. So, secondly, you know what? Never had one drop of alcohol over the weekend. I didn't have one beer. So, I worked Friday night and I worked Sunday, and got out of town on Saturday. Actually, I went down the coast, got in the water. Felt really good on Sunday, unlike some of my colleagues. But it was when you turn up and some people are hungover and you feel on top of the world. That is probably the best feeling in the world. So. I didn't go out. I didn't hit Caxton Street, although it looked like an incredible place to be. Just even the streets, alcohol aside and drinks aside, the atmosphere and the energy around Caxton Street, Brisbane CBD, Suncorp Stadium. I asked Andrew Abdo in an interview on Channel 9, I said, you do a lot of measurements off numbers and all that, whether it's successful or not. You just got to sit back and absorb this feeling. Sit back and absorb the energy of the people and how happy they are. I think that goes a long way, because I don't think there was an unhappy person in and around Suncorp Stadium all weekend, and maybe a few teams and a few coaches. But it was an incredible atmosphere. Loved it. Look forward to next year already.
Back you up on that one. Yesterday I went along, took the family along, and we chose not to get the bus to the stadium. We went into the city and then walked up so the kids could experience, and my two were 10 and 12, so the kids could experience that walk down Caxton Street. It was just fantastic. There was so much entertainment, so much going on, and then you hit the Northern Plaza, and you're right, everyone had a smile on their face.
Yeah, and the colours, the jersey colours. You know what I'm loving at the moment, Salty? I'm loving the retro jerseys.
Yes.
I walk past a retro Canberra Raiders jersey or a Balmain Tigers, and I'm like, I actually had one of them in my cupboard. I reckon I had every jersey in the NRL in my cupboard. I don't know how I got them. But yeah, just all the retro jerseys are just they're incredible. They're the highlight for me when I'm just walking down the street or, going to the stadium and you see all these jerseys walking down the street. That's, that just shows you that they're, flying the flag for our game and celebrating our game.
Also, Gold Coast Chargers jerseys as well around the place.
Crushers, South Queensland Crushers, yeah. Yeah,
outstanding. If you want to send a question through, by the way, great question, Andrew, the Billy Slater Podcast at 9.com.au. That's what you have to do to email your questions, Billy Slater Podcast at 9.com.au. Round 10, can you believe it? Round 10 this weekend, and it all starts with Eels v Dolphins on Thursday night. Big game, I know, for both clubs, but particularly, Billy, for the Dolphins, who'll want to turn that around.
Yeah, the Eels aren't far off either. They're playing pretty tough footy. Nearly got over the Sharks, who we all think that they're probably a top 4 team, the Sharks, and they were in some form on the weekend. So that's a big one for the Dolphins. That's a couple in a row that they've lost, and they need to find their form from what they've delivered over the last month. Round 10, Salty. There's only 2 rounds to go before we're in Origin camp. So. All games are pretty exciting for me. I'm pretty intently watching all these teams play and all the individuals within the teams that are Queenslanders. So there's a big game on Saturday afternoon. It's not a Channel 9 game, but the Raiders and the Bulldogs. The Raiders and the Bulldogs, 1v2. Now, who would have thought that, a couple of years ago? 1v2, Raiders, Bulldogs, how the competition has evened out. And the other thing I mentioned on the Sunday Footy Show yesterday, although the Panthers haven't had the great start to the season that they normally have, the influence over the competition that the Panthers have had, you've got the Bulldogs sitting on top of the ladder. They've got an assistant coach from the Panthers in Cameron Ciraldo. Their captain, Stephen Crichton, also their star back rower in Viliami Kikau. That's a huge influence to be successful there. You've got the Tigers, who've got some star players and key players in Api Coruscant, Jerome Luai, and Sunia Taruva. They're influencing their success at the moment. And then you've got the Warriors. Andrew Webster was an assistant coach at the Panthers. Kurt Capewell is over there. So the Panthers, although aren't sitting in the top 8 at the moment, they've had huge influences over some of the teams and some of the success stories that we're talking about at the moment. It just evens itself out, and the Panthers are still influencing some success in this season at the moment.
One word on the match on Channel 9 on Sunday afternoon. Manly v Sharks. Seagulls coming off the bye. They missed out on the Magic Round party, but they're at home at 4 Pines against the Sharks on Sunday at 4.
Yeah, and you saw the difference that Tom Trbojevic makes when he comes back. Lost 3 in a row with him out. He comes back and they're back in the winner's circle. Fresh off a bye. I think they're going to be back to their scintillating best. And it's going to be a great entertaining game because, the Sharks like using the football as well, and the form that Nico Hines showed on the weekend at Magic Round. This is going to be a belter. 4 Pines Park. It should be full. Look forward to it. I'll be there.
Billy, it's been a great week for rugby league. Magic Round was a great success. And as you said, Origin not all that far away. But round 10 is next week. And we look forward to that. And we'll see you at the footy across the weekend.
Will do. I'm sure there'll be some people catching up on some sleep. So enjoy the week, guys.
Yes, those that party too much, they will sleep well in the early part of this week. I'm not going to name names, but yes. Anyway, thanks, Billy.
Pleasure.
That's Billy Slater. I'm Peter Psaltis. This is the Billy Slater Podcast. A new episode comes out each and every Monday, and we do it all thanks to Tab. Have a great week.